what do you look for when you are hiring a leader to work with or work for you in terms of a project or in your organization?
It does come down to, I always have to be able to work with the person. So it comes down to a values fit. I have to like the person. So, it has to be someone that I have something in common with or have common ground with. It doesn't have to be, I'm certainly not looking for someone like me. In fact, when I'm hiring, I look for people, I definitely hire for my weaknesses. And that's absolutely critical because, if you have a team and everyone is the same, you're going to have gaps all over the place. So if I'm hiring, it obviously depends on the role, but I really do look for people, that I believe I can work with and can work with me, people that I can respect. And then I say people who've got skills and expertise that I don't have. And that's absolutely critical. So I think those are the general principles. Obviously, there are the hard criteria from an experience point of view, qualifications point of view. But the softer things, it really has to be someone that I believe will be a good fit with me and the rest of the team.
Leighton, what would you say are some of your weaknesses? You said you'd hire for your weaknesses. So in your own words, what are some of your weaknesses?
Very definitely, I'm an introvert, and as a result of that, my communication is not always as soft as it should be, because it's usually quite planned. So I need to surround myself with people that can manage the relationships better than I can. When I get to know people well, I manage them better. But so very definitely, I need people that are very good at leading teams and interacting with people. So that's very definitely one of, I don't know if it's necessarily a weakness. It's a weakness only if you don't identify it.
Right.
Is that, as I say, just my communication style. And I've been told before I come across as being austere. And it's not the intention, but I've got to accept that I come across as that. And it's a matter of looking for this. So that's very definitely, I would say, something I've got to hire for. And then minute detail is not my strength. I can do it. It's not my strength. There are a lot of people that are much better at doing it. So, detailed project management, not my strength. I do need to be surrounded by people and supported by people that are able to manage me. And I'm always very happy to be managed. If I can add value, I'm more than happy to be managed by anyone in our team that has that strength.
And as a leader yourself, you're very self-aware of your own strengths, your own weaknesses. Do you believe that you can become a better leader?
Oh, definitely. Oh, very definitely. I do think to an extent, a lot of it is there's a lot of innate qualities that a leader has to have. And as I said to before, I think that ability to understand people where they are, to respect people, that's absolutely critical. So I think those are things that you have to have, and you have to have that in you, or the ability to develop that to be a leader. But very definitely, if I look back on my leadership career, and I'd like to think I've developed and got better over time, because sure, I've made mistakes and I continue to make mistakes. But there's some quite significant mistakes I wouldn't make again. You definitely do learn, if you go back and reflect. And I think that's the important piece, is to be able to reflect when something doesn't go well. If it does go well, say what went well, why did it go well, what can I do more of? What didn't go well? Be honest with yourself and say, how could I have avoided that? Or could someone else have done that better than me, and next time they would do it rather than me? So those are the sort of things you have to look at. So very definitely, I think the leadership journey is an ongoing one.
Most definitely. It's that journey of getting to know yourself, which never ends. So you said, there were some mistakes that you would not want to repeat. Can you share maybe one or a lesson from some of those things that you've learned over your time?
I suppose a number of listen, I've made lots of mistakes. I'm trying to think of an example of what would be, I can remember being a fairly new CEO and working with a board, and having my team also attending the board meeting, and having a board member that I didn't necessarily agree with. I thought he was wrong on a particular issue, and I needed to get my point across. I wanted my way in the meeting. I got my way in the meeting, but I got it by behaving badly. And afterwards I got way, it would have been easy to come out and think to myself, well, I got my way, great, that's how it works. But I reflected on that and thought, I had a whole team of people there, my team, looking at me as the role model. And that certainly wasn't the behavior I wanted to model. What would have been a better route to follow in that instance would have been, I knew up front that was going to be a problem in the board meeting. I should have met with that board member before, had the discussion, either agreed to disagree, but agreed on a way in which we'd manage it. So, I look back on that, and it wasn't a moment I was proud of, because despite getting what I wanted, I didn't do it well. you've got to look at those sort of things. So, I suppose that always remembering that people are watching. And if you're in a position of what people perceive as power, they will try and emulate that and think that it's the way to, and, so you've got to make sure that you're always behaving in a way that you're proud of. So that for me was a big learning. And I still remember to that day. I can remember the boardroom, I can remember the circumstances and everything. And I say not something I look back with pride. I suppose the only positive was that I'd like to think I did learn from it.
Yeah, and that requires some humility on your part and some courage to even reflect on it and, realize how you may have not wanted to act. Did that come naturally to you? Did you have to work at it? What did you do after you've reflected?
I think I knew instinctively as it was happening. I knew it was because I could see that the board member wasn't happy, and I think I'd hurt the board member's feelings. I think actually what I had done was sort of humiliated someone in front of their peers. So I instinctively knew at the time it wasn't right. So I gave it some thought, and then I spoke to my team the next day and said, explained the situation. Said, listen, this is what went well, but the process wasn't good, and this is what I could have done better. And said to them, listen, when this happens, I'm always open to feedback. If you think this happens, if this happens again, if you see this behavior, let's have that discussion. Because I said, I will certainly be giving it to you, but I expect that, that if there's something that makes you feel uncomfortable, or if there's something you think I could have done better, let me know. So, and I think people appreciate it. It also lets people know that they're able to give you that feedback.
Right.
Otherwise, believe me, they're going to talk about it amongst themselves.
Yeah.
And I'd rather they speak to me about it.
As the CEO, it's intimidating for the rest of your team to give you that feedback if you haven't asked for it. And, once you did ask for it, did you find that people were willing to share, their views or their feedback?
Yeah, again, it depends on people. Some people always, are going to see that power gap. I think these days, to a lesser extent, which is useful. I think, in my early days of leadership, there was this real thing where there was no way you gave feedback. You gave feedback upwards. It only came down. Right. I think now times have changed. So I think very definitely, one does get more feedback now. We also have more access now to things like 360-degree feedback and everything, which I think is a useful thing for those people who maybe are not that comfortable giving feedback in person. We should provide those opportunities for leaders to learn about how they're coming across. So I'm a big supporter of that whole process. But it was well received, and very definitely after that, I think it broke down a barrier where people felt that they could actually give me that feedback and saw me as potentially being slightly more human. Because as I say, I know I come across as not necessarily always being that soft, but it did break down those barriers.